But let's talk about these new relievers they picked up. They got Daniel Norris, who at one point was MLB's third best left-handed prospect. He was the Blue Jays' #1 prospect. He was a starter. Now he's a reliever. What are your thoughts when they got him? Because his ERA isn't the prettiest. But maybe they saw something in him and they can tweak something that can really get the most out of him.
A couple of years, was it 2 years ago or last year, whenever it was, these years sort of run together, but Stearns went out and got Drew Pomeranz in a similar kind of situation as a guy who, the stats were not the best, but his pitching profile was exactly what Stearns wanted to work with. And Pomeranz became a dominant reliever in Milwaukee, and he's continued that in San Diego. I see a little bit of that with Daniel Norris. I see a little bit of this concept of changing what percentage of pitches you throw in which situations, because the overall numbers are pretty bad, but Norris has been better of late because he's changed his pitching profile of late. So I could see, Stearns, and the Brewers staff too, and everything that they do with the lab and all that, getting Norris down to 2 effective pitches as opposed to 3 pitches that don't seem to work. And that's one of the things that the Brewers have done so well. I mean, you know this. It's either pitchers or hitters. One of the things the Brewers have done really well is they seem to acquire guys who then perform better than they had in their previous locations. I think it works better for pitchers even than hitters. Pomeranz is a great example of somebody who was just amazing once they picked him up. I don't know if Norris will be in that kind of role, but I think he'll be an effective, kind of reliever. And Stearns sees something in the profile that matches that concept, that idea of being better here, using maybe 2 pitches as opposed to 3.
Yeah, because right now he does 4-seam fastball 44% of the time, slider almost 30%, and then the changeup about 26.3%. And the changeup seems to be his best pitch, 2.211 opponent's batting average and expected batting average of 165, and then he has a 36.6% whiff rate with that pitch. So I can definitely see the Brewers looking at him, looking at what he does, and just telling him, you know what, maybe stick to 4-seam fastball and changeup, get rid of the slider, or maybe slider changeup. And I completely agree with you. I think at this point, fans have to really just understand that they're really good at what they do. And like you said, Stearns has an eye for talent. The whole front office does. Like, their scouting talent, their pro scouting talent is so good that they can see talent and say, you know what, we can take this pitcher or this hitter and make him even better. And you just got to love to see that.
It's, and it's one of those things where if you doubted the abilities of sabermetrics to help make you a better baseball team, I think David Stearns is like exhibit A for sabermetrics working well. I mean, he's, just modern analysis. I mean, sabermetrics, I think, might even be an antiquated way to look at it. It's just modern analysis of the game. It's past, the way they looked at it 30 years ago with average and homer and runs batted in and ERA. You can look at different stats and different breakdowns now, see trends, see things that work for pitchers and for hitters, and see things that can plug into your ball club. And yeah, I know you were talking about this before. I know the day is going to come when David Stearns is going to someone's going to back up a Brinks truck, and he's going to be somebody's general manager, and it's going to be terrible for the Brewers fans when it happens. But the time that he's been here, the acquisitions that he's made, the things that he has done, it's, you're not going to be 100% in baseball in anything, right? But he is about as close as you can get. I mean, you could count Jonathan Scope and Neftali Feliz were busts.
Yeah.
Who else? I mean, that's almost it, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, to still make the playoffs with the team they trotted out last year, I don't know that anybody really expected that. Just looking at that lineup on paper, and they managed to sneak in. I mean, obviously, expanded playoffs a little bit helped, but it still counts as a year in the playoffs, which is, we'll take it. But yeah, it's been incredible how well he has done on finding some of these guys. And what you were mentioning about, the front office catching trends, with Francisco talking about the pitch selection that Norris has had, his last 12 games, he's been using that changeup a ton more and has been much more effective. In his last 6 coming into the Brewers, he hadn't allowed a run. So, I mean, it's things like that they obviously spotted that trend. Okay, he's been throwing his changeup more. He's been much more effective. Let's go look at him. So it's incredible to see little things like that didn't slip by the front office when they made that move.
That's right. They're paying attention, and that's the kind of thing that has to happen with a successful major league front office too. I mean, you're talking about a 6-game sample from a Tigers reliever. I mean, I follow the game. I don't follow it that close. I didn't know about a 6-game sample from a Tigers reliever, but David Stearns does. It's his job to be focused in on that, and that's something that they've just done extremely well. They're able to take, even that smallest sample size and make some bets based on it. And in this case, it was just a matter of acquiring some talent without giving up a lot of talent. It's not like they dismantled a lot for the future. So they get a couple of good months out of Daniel Norris without giving up a ton in return. I mean, can't argue that.
Yeah, if you look at all the talent they've acquired and what they've given up, like they didn't touch any of their top prospects, and they can still have some of them come up. Maybe we can see them at the end of the year. They can come up next year, and we have the future still intact with a lot of our top prospects. And we still have a really good chance this season to go really deep in the playoffs. Like, you got to love what this front office is doing.
Right now, the Brewers have this comfortable lead in the Central, and the second place team is not a team I think is going to stay where they are. I think that second place team's actually got a downward trend, a downward vector going. So I feel like the first step of getting in is as close to automatic for this team as it's been. That's usually August 1st. You're still talking about, look, there's a lot of work left to be done. The team has to find a way into the playoffs, whether it's a division championship, if it's a wild card, whatever. I feel like it's probably a bad thing to say. I'm not trying to jinx anyone on as we get into August here. Okay?
Francisco, mute him.
Keep the jinx. Don't do it. No, but my thought is like, I feel like that part's almost done already. Like the getting in part is almost done. So it's a matter of making sure that roster gets hot and does the right things at the right time, right? That's a part that you can never tell. That's the part that turns wildcard teams into World Series champs. So the first part's almost good, almost. The second part, you just gotta hope that September gets good and October gets better.
On that point, though, if you look at teams like the Giants, the Padres, and the Dodgers, every game that they play up to the end of the season is going to be so important. They won't have opportunities to rest key starters. They won't have opportunities to, take a game off, so to speak, here and there, like the Brewers can, because if they go heading into the end of the season with still a 7-8 game lead, they have a chance to rest some of their starters, maybe give a position player a day off here and there, and really go into the postseason well rested compared to another team where they're battling just so they don't make that wild card. Because if you're in the National League wild card game, that's where you don't want to be, because one of those 3 giants of the teams out there, no pun intended, with the Giants included, 2 of them are going home after 1 game.
That's tough. It really is. But as you mentioned, as the Brewers, you can watch all of this play out. You can watch the West beat up on each other. And however that plays out, Dodgers, Padres, Giants, honestly, it may be a situation where the division winner ends up as the 1 seed and the Brewers as the 2 can think about the East winner as the 3. I love that as a first round matchup. You give me whoever out of that division. And by the way, the fact that Atlanta went out and bought a whole new outfield makes me think Atlanta might end up being that team. I mean, they lost Acuna and they went farther in as opposed to being out. I like it. I like a GM that believes in his roster enough to go for it, and so it may turn out to be Milwaukee and Atlanta in the first round, or whoever that East winner is. But yeah, I definitely like that matchup better than I like anybody out West. You want them to beat up on each other as much as humanly possible before you have to face them.
Yeah, and if that is our positioning, then we'll only see one of those 3 of the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Giants. So when all these fans are freaking out, seeing what those 3 teams did, we can just relax because we only have to face one of them. And our pitching is good enough to match up with any one of those teams. We don't have to go through them. It's not like the Bucks who had to go through Kevin Durant and the 76ers, and then the Hawks, and then the Suns. They had a gauntlet of teams that they had to go through. The Brewers, I'm not saying anything against the Mets or the Braves, but they're nothing compared to teams like the Dodgers or the Giants or the Padres.
The Bucks had to. So the joke that we had in the newsroom at my day job is that the Bucks had to blow up the Death Star early in the playoffs. That's what beating the Nets was, blowing up the Death Star, right? Because it was Durant, it was James Harden, it was all of that, right? And that's the thing you want to avoid, is to start your playoff run by having to do something like that. If you can do it later, then that works out all right. Yeah, I don't know. I tell people every year who panic when we get to the 1st of August, like, don't panic. It's going to be fine. Don't judge a season based on the first 4 months, because there's a lot of baseball left and a lot of meaningful baseball left. And yet it is extremely difficult for me not to get caught up in the thought that the Brewers have a chance to be playing at the end of October. It is the worst thing to be thinking about on August 1st, and I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, and you mentioned, this offense getting hot at the right time, and picking it up. In the last 15 games, they're 4th in batting average in the National League, which is, what we've been waiting to see. You go back to earlier in the year, and Francisco and I would sit here and talk, and it's like, well, okay, the other team scored 3 runs tonight. Yeah. It's done. It's over. Over. There was just nothing there. So nice to see those guys, starting to hit the ball as well to kind of match up with some of this pitching. Gives a lot more hope moving forward.